the Great Western engine was waiting at the station when Emily pulled up beside him. "Hello, Emily," he said. "Lovely day, isn't it?" "No, it's not," Emily snapped. "Whatever's the matter?" "A new railtour is coming to the island," explained Emily. "That's not really something to get upset over," pondered Duck. "You don't understand," Emily went on. "My good-for-nothing sister's pulling the train." Duck was surprised. "Her name is Gertrude," Emily continued, "and back in the old days, she'd always fuss and lecture me every chance she could. 'Don't do this, Emily. Don't do that, Emily. It's unbecoming of an engine of your status, Emily.' It drove me mad. I was glad to be rid of her once I came to Sodor." Just then, the signal changed and Emily huffed away. Later, Duck arrived at Knapford Station and he saw the visiting engine in a siding. As soon as he arranged his trucks, he went over to say hello. "Hello, I'm Duck. You must be Gertrude," he said warmly. "Yes, I am," the visitor replied. "How do you know my name?" "Your sister Emily told me," Duck explained. "She also mentioned that you two have a bit of history together." Gertrude sighed and looked away. "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to offend." No, it's all right," Gertrude reassured. "It's just that everything she said was true. I was a right fusspot to her back then, but I never meant to hurt her feelings. When I heard that my railtour was headed to Sodor, I wanted to take an opportunity to apologise to her." "I'll certainly let her know of your intentions." "Thank you, Duck." That night in the sheds, Emily was telling the other engines about how bossy Gertrude was. "It seems your sister of yours is nothing but trouble." "Agreed," said James. "If I were you," added Henry, "I'd avoid her so she won't be able to order you about." "I suggest we all do that," huffed Emily. "No, wait a minute," interrupted Duck. "I spoke to Gertrude earlier today. She told me she wants to apologise for being so bossy." Emily spluttered. "I don't believe her. It sounds like she just wants to make trouble for me again. Henry's right. I say we avoid her while she's here." "That's settled then," said Gordon. Duck wished it wasn't. The next day, the engines made their plan. Whenever they saw Gertrude, they ignored any attempt she made to speak to them. "I'm sorry about those silly engines," Duck said later that day. "I did try to tell her, but she thinks you're lying." "It's a shame," said Gertrude. "I hate to think I came all this way for nothing." Just then, Emily pulled up. "Duck," she said, "what are you doing talking to her?" "That's enough, Emily," Duck announced. "Gertrude here's been trying to talk to you ever since she's arrived. The very least you could do is hear her out." Emily huffed. "All right," she said crossly. Gertrude began. "Emily, I know that when you left for Sodor years ago, we weren't on the best of terms. I know that I fussed at you constantly, but it was only because I thought I knew better. I know it's taken me a long time to realise how my actions have affected you, and all I wanted to say was, I'm sorry." Well, Emily didn't know what to think. Part of her wanted to accept Gertrude's apology, but another part reminded her of how rude she was all those years ago. So she said nothing and backed out of the yard. Gertrude was most upset. "She'll never forgive me," she whimpered. The next day, Emily was puffing happily down the line with the coaches. but when she turned the corner, she could see that a lorry had slid off the road and crashed onto the tracks. Emily's driver applied the brakes, but it was too late. Emily crashed straight into the lorry and came off the rails. No one was hurt, but Emily laid on the ballast, bewildered by the crash. While her driver and guard checked to see if the passengers were okay, the fireman went to telephone for help. Meanwhile, at Knapford, Gertrude's Railtour train was waiting to set off. She was still sad that she'd never made amends with Emily. Suddenly, the Railtour manager came up. "I'm sorry, Gertrude," he said, "but there's been an accident up the line. Until it's been cleared, we're stuck here." "Oh dear," thought Gertrude. Then the station master came up. "I just received updated news on the accident," he said. "Apparently, Emily has hit a lorry and has come off." Gertrude gasped. "Please, sir," she said to the Railtour manager, "do let me help her. She's my sister after all." "Very well," the Railtour manager agreed. "Be quick now." So Gertrude grabbed a huge crane from the yard and made her way to the accident. Emily was surprised to see her. "Gertrude," she said, "what are you doing here?" "I came to save you, silly." "But why, after I've been so rude?" "You're still my sister," Gertrude said. "Nothing can change that. Now, let's get you back on the rails." Once the accident had been cleared away, Emily and Gertrude made their way back to the yard. "I'm sorry that I didn't believe you," said Emily, "and I forgive you for being fussy all those years ago, and I forgive you for holding a grudge," said Gertrude. "Now that's what I like to see," said Duck. "Of course, a feud like this would never have lasted long on the Great Western." "Oh no," groaned Emily. "Really?" said Gertrude huffily. "Well, let me tell you how we did things on the Great Northern." "If you do, the train will never leave," said her driver, and everyone had a good laugh.